Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to beautiful Chiang Mai. Well, in this episode, I'm going to talk to two of my friends, two young expats. We're going to talk about their journey over here. And I decided to do a series on expats because I don't want you to just learn from me. I want you to learn from others that have also made that decision to become an expat. So let's go and meet our friends Michael and Grace and make this happen. I'll see you there. All right, so we are here. I told you we're going to have our first expat interview, and I was able to talk these two guys into it. So this is Mike and Grace, and I met them, I don't know, a month ago, 2 months ago.
2 months ago now, I think.
Yeah, 2 months ago at pickleball, and Grace never told me she was a sandbagger. She just whooped everybody's butt that day. So welcome and thanks for doing this. And one of the things I mentioned in the intro is the fact that, you know, I'm hoping that we all can learn from each other this expat thing, which is very scary. So when they look at you right now, they're saying, wait, they're not old enough to be retired. You know, don't you have to be like 65 or 70? And that's the mindset that we have in America. But I just want to let all the viewers know, you can answer these questions for me. So you're not trust fund babies, right?
We are not.
And you never like invest in cryptocurrency and now you're crypto millionaires or...
No. We were asked and I said, no way, that's way too volatile. There's no way we're going to do that.
So, you know, it's just possible to make a big jump like this if you just do it the right way. And we're going to get into some of this. So first of all...
Well, to that, a lot of people ask, how can you afford to be retired? And my answer to that has been, if you can't afford to retire where you are, then go someplace where you can afford to retire.
That's right.
And for us, that was Chiang Mai.
Yep, geo arbitrage is a real thing. You know, you just do your research and you can make it happen. But let's start out. You know, you're from the States, so where'd you grow up at? Let's start with you, Grace. Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, we're actually both from Connecticut.
Oh, okay.
So I'm from Central Connecticut. And actually spent more years in the Boston area after I left for college, and that's where we met.
And I'm from Northeast Connecticut, right where Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island all come together. And I've lived there almost my entire life. I moved up to the Boston area for work after the company I worked for was acquired, and that was in 2015. So before that, my entire life was in Connecticut.
Okay. So
but Northeast Connecticut is more cows than people. People think of Connecticut as what we call the Gold Coast, the Southeast, Stamford, all the hedge funds and all of that. And I'm on the exact opposite end, which is just cows.
As we say in the South, so you grew up in the sticks.
Yeah, the term that we use is swamp Yankee. Oh, okay. It's not necessarily a complimentary term, but it kind of describes, yeah.
I would have never guessed it. So did both of your path take you the kind of traditional American path through college?
Yes.
Okay. If you mind me asking, what did you major in?
I majored in history at the University of Connecticut.
Okay.
And then after we moved to Asia, I started an MBA program online with the University of North Carolina, but did not finish it. It was synchronous, and the timing, being 12 hours off, really hurt my ability to attend classes.
That would do it. And what about you, Grace?
I majored in applied math.
Oh, wow.
At Harvard. And then I have my MBA and doctoral degree in education from Northeastern.
Okay. So how did your path cross?
Oh, this is a fun story.
So we met IRL in real life.
Okay.
At where I live, just outside of Boston, was an old mill town. And so there were all of these old mill buildings that were no longer used for manufacturing, and they had been turned into various spaces. Some of it was turned into residences, and some of it was turned into artist spaces. So there was a photographer who had a side gig, an evening gig, if you will. Every week he would host singles events, and they were themed. So a theme might be bring your laptop and work on your online profile with other people, including people of the opposite gender, to get feedback on your profile. But the one that I went to, that we met at, was playing Cards Against Humanity.
Oh, I know that game.
So,
Yeah.
you want to...
Yeah, so I figured it was a Monday night, $10 to show up, right? And you get drinks and
Box wine
and chips. And hopefully I was going to meet someone with a sick enough sense of humor, but, not too sick, who knew how to play this game. And it would just be a fun night, right? And it was on my way home from work. And it was kind of around the corner from where he lived at the time. And so, yeah, that's how we met. And then, long story short, we ended up hiring the photographer as our wedding photographer.
That's our wedding
Wow.
photographer. And he, when we contacted him, he was so excited. I have to call my mom. I have to tell my mom. So he told us that we were the first couple that he was aware of who had met at one of his events who got married. So he was very excited for us.
So you guys took an event and you turned it into speed dating.
Well, no, it actually was a lot like that.
Oh, yeah?
It was very well run, very well organized, and you had an opportunity to meet everybody in the room. You played the game in groups, and you rotated through the groups.
Yeah.
And when I walked into the room, I saw Grace, and I said, "Oh, I want to meet her."
Yeah.
But the way the rotation worked, she was the last game.
Oh, wow.
And you almost left.
I almost left. So the photographer does a really good job. Shout out to John Fisher in Boston. But he crafts it so that there are equal number of people of both genders and
for a heterosexual meetup.
Exactly. And then it's age controlled, right? So we went to an event for people in their 40s and 50s.
Oh, okay.
We were distinctly the youngest people in the room.
Yeah.
So Mike did catch my attention.
And I think it was interesting, it was an event for people in their 40s and 50s, and there were men there in their 70s.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Something for everyone.
Yeah.
So it was something for everyone. No, that's great. So let's fast forward a little bit. If you guys recognize Mike, he was in the Dinkies video with me also, so that's why he looks familiar to you, because he is familiar
Just
to you.
making sure I'm not wearing the same shirt.
Now, you told me a story, but I didn't get the whole story. How did she become your boss?
Okay. Would you like to tell the story of Taiwan? So it is now the beginning of May, and we arrived in Chiang Mai in January. Before that, we spent approximately 6 years living in Taipei, Taiwan.
Right, which is where we moved to about 2 weeks after we got married in Boston.
Oh, okay.
So I think I asked Mike, hey, are we up for an adventure? We just got offered 2 jobs at the same school in Taiwan. Let's go.
Oh, wow.
So that's what happened. And so we became expats together in 2018.
And so my background, I had never worked in education. I was at the time working in the petroleum industry. Previous to that, I had spent a lot of time working in the trades. And I also did some time with private security. So I got offered the position of director of facilities, which was running maintenance, security, construction, housekeeping, transportation, some stuff that I had some experience in. But Grace was...
Well, I was hired first to fill a maternity leave position as a counselor, and then I was hired to be deputy head of school. Unbeknownst to all of us, the head of school had to retire for medical reasons, and I was plopped into the position of interim head. And then COVID hits, and basically I was appointed head of school for the 3 years during COVID. And so as head of school of a over 2,400 student school, and over 700 adult employees, which included my husband. That's how.
Oh, wow.
I did not directly answer to you,
No,
though. That
you
is
did not.
true.
Except at home.
Well, I mean, always, but officially.
No, you scared me for a minute when you said, I did some time. You did time? Then you were able to explain yourself. So, Okay, so I have to figure that out right there, but no. But that's pretty cool. So here's the thing. Now, a lot of people think of, retiring overseas. They think about, what hit you? Everyone has their own story. What made you say, you know what, it's time for us to kind of do what we want to do on our time frame? Especially you're both under 60, under 55.
I'm 50.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Less than 50.
close to 50.
Yeah. How did that conversation about retirement come up?
Well, you had always said that in your perfect world, you would be retired by the time you were 50.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, in my perfect world, I'd work until the day I died.
That's the American way.
Well, I enjoy the sense of personal accomplishment from having a job and working.
Right.
When we were looking at the future, and Grace was weighing whether or not she would stay in the position of head of school, we had to make some decisions. How would we support ourselves if she was to transition into a consultant role? So I had the opportunity to leave the school and start a consulting business in advance of her retirement.
Okay.
So I did that, started consulting in some risk management, emergency preparedness, crisis response. And then unexpectedly, you had the opportunity to retire earlier than anticipated. So we had a foundation that I had already laid for this consulting business.
Right.
And the idea had been that when she retired, she would come on board. So that just accelerated a little bit.
Okay. Now,
And she gets more business now than I do. So.
Now, how did you come about choosing Thailand for your retirement?
Last April, I was visiting Thailand. I had a friend from the U.S. who had come to visit us in Taiwan, and we took a short, like a 5-day trip to Thailand. And I had hired a tour guide to drive us from Bangkok to Pattaya and show us around Pattaya. And talking to him, and at this point in time, retirement in our mind was still a year and a half away, at least.
Okay.
And we had been considering Portugal as a landing place for us in retirement. And the tour guide said, well, why don't you come to Thailand? I said, I don't know. What can you tell me about this? And he said, well, Thailand has a retirement visa program if you are 50 years or older, and if you can put 800,000 baht, which is roughly $27,000 US, into a bank account at the time of your application and the time of your renewal for this 1-year retirement visa, he said you could come live in Thailand. We kind of said, well, that's nice, but we're still a ways away.
Yeah.
And then when you had the opportunity to retire early, we had to scramble because we knew we couldn't afford to retire back in the US.
Right.
And Portugal had not come through. So we started looking at what other countries offered retirement visas.
Okay. Now let me stop you right there for
yeah.
a moment. Is this during the COVID period? Is this right after COVID?
This would be in early summer of 2023. So
Okay, so yeah, all
June,
of that.
July
Okay.
2023.
We're back on track.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Yep. And we knew we didn't want snow. So that left many of the places in Europe out.
Yeah.
And at the time, we were struggling to find countries in Asia, especially Southeast Asia, that had a retirement visa that we could afford.
Right.
Because you can go to some of the countries if you put $1 million into an account, and we didn't have $1 million to put into an account. So we were looking at Malaysia, and they had a digital nomad visa for people in the technology industry, and we looked at that and realized that we didn't qualify. There is a province in Malaysia called Sabah, which is on the island of Borneo, and that province itself offers a retirement visa program which is kind of similar to the one here. But Sabah is pretty remote. Kota Kinabalu, the main city, is considerably smaller than... It's about the size of Krabi, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's pretty small. And every time we found a country, it just wasn't a better fit for us than Thailand.
Oh, wow.
And we had been here, I don't know, a dozen times over the years and felt very comfortable here.
So you make it here, you land here. Tell us about your house hunting process that you went through.
I'm going to leave this one to Grace because she handled all of this.
Oh my goodness. I mean, there's a lot of luck involved in our story as well. So what ended up happening was we chose Chiang Mai and knew that we wanted to end up here and activate our retirement visas here. But we roughly knew when we were going to land, and we didn't know how to get started. We had some friends here who recommended some realtors. But what ended up happening, long story short, was we had to sell all our electronics in Taiwan. Taiwan has the same plugs as the US, right? And we knew that they wouldn't work in Thailand. Yeah. So we basically had to sell off everything that had an electrical plug. And I was telling my friend in Chiang Mai the story, and she said, I found this woman who's actually selling a lot of the stuff that you just sold. Like, would you like to take a look at this website and see what she's selling and buy the things from her? And so the story revolves around this hair dryer. You may have heard of the Dyson hair dryer, which is a ridiculous purchase. But I had sold my Dyson hair dryer, and this woman in Chiang Mai was selling her Dyson hair dryer because she was returning back to the United States. So basically, for the same exact price, I bought her hair dryer, and she was selling all these other things in her house that we knew we needed: air purifiers, fans, dehumidifiers, all that, washer, dryer. And then she said, well, if you're buying everything, do you just want to take over my lease?
Before that, she said, we bought the washer and dryer, and she said, where would you like it delivered? And we said, oh, we don't actually have a place yet. And then she said,
I'm actually breaking my lease. Do you want to take it over?
Oh, wow.
And she had already prepaid the year, so she just said, please just pay me 5 months, and you can just move right in. The internet's set up, the water's set up, everything's set up. You can even have my housekeeper, right? And we just thought, my God, this is too easy to be true. Is this
a
really
scam?
Gonna work?
Yeah.
After hearing all the stories about scams, we were very hesitant and very careful.
So it all worked out. We actually landed, drove to the house, we got in, and she had hooked us up with the landlord, right, just to make sure that all was legit. And there was a hairdryer waiting for me, and we took over her house.
And the landlord, we had been in contact with the landlord, and the landlord made sure that we had, some furniture, beds. She left, plates and cups and stuff like that. So we landed. We had, knowing that we were coming here,
right?
We had come to Bangkok for a conference in October, and we had brought, each of us had brought an extra suitcase of things. So we had brought towels, sheets, all of that type of thing. And when we got to Bangkok, we left those with a friend, and then we came back in January. We were here for New Year's, and we went and retrieved those suitcases, and we paid a delivery company, Flash Express, It's kind of like UPS or FedEx,
Okay.
but cheaper, to take those spare suitcases. And by that time, because when we arrived in January, we also had extra suitcases. So we had 4 suitcases that we shipped from Bangkok to Chiang Mai. And we had a friend here who received them. So we had all of this waiting for us when we arrived.
Okay, so you're ready to set up home by the time you got here.
Yep.
Oh, that's pretty interesting.
When we moved to Taiwan, our shipment of all our belongings, all our possessions was delayed. And we were in Taiwan for almost 5 months before that shipment arrived with everything that we owned.
Oh, wow.
You know, we had come with some clothes and that was it. All of our furniture, and we moved into an apartment that was not furnished. So we had nothing.
Oh, wow.
So we learned a lot from that experience of, okay, we know we're going to need bedding, we know we're going to need this and that. So there was some experience that led to some pre-planning on our part.
Right. No, awesome. So what are some of the struggles that you had when you first made up your mind, we're going to move to Thailand? Were there any kind of struggles as far as just airline tickets, convincing your family you were not crazy?
Well, my family already accepts that I'm crazy. But I think there is an answer to that, but maybe for us, we need to go back 6 years for when we left the U.S. for Taiwan.
Oh, okay.
Because that initial exodus, emigration out of the U.S. probably was when we experienced all these things that you're asking about. And you had previously spent 3 years in Taiwan, so your family...
They accepted the fact I was going to
back.
be a little nomadic in my life.
Yep. My family was very excited. Growing up in this small little rural farming community, it was a great place to grow up, but not a whole lot of economic opportunities as an adult if you didn't want to be working on a farm or working in a manufacturing capacity. So growing up, I had always said, I'm going to leave this place, I'm going to leave, I'm going to go out, I'm going to see the world, and I'm never coming back. And didn't happen. So when it finally happened, I think my family may have been like, oh, well, finally he's going to...
All these dreams he has,
Yeah.
finally he's going to do something.
Yeah. And I think there were the things that I personally wasn't prepared for was, it wasn't the language barrier, it wasn't the food, it wasn't being able to, or not being able to read signs. It was those connections with family back home that when you're there living with people that you see on a daily basis or a weekly basis, you know everything that's going on in their life, and your lives are running these parallel tracks. And then all of a sudden, when I start going like this, all those day-to-day things, conversations, knowledge of the minutia that happens in everybody's day-to-day life fell away. And it required a lot of effort to stay in touch with people, and this is even when I moved out of Connecticut and moved to Boston, which was only 65 miles away.
Okay.
But nobody would ever call me. Nobody would ever write me unless there was a very specific reason. Nobody was checking in to say, hey, how are you doing? So at that point was when I started, accepting that, hey, I've got to pick up the phone. I have to call my brother. I have to call my father. I have to call my friends. I have to send emails to keep in touch with people. And then coming here, it's even a little bit more difficult because of the time difference.
Right.
So what I've done with my friends is we set up a specific, every third Monday, we have a Zoom call from this time to this time. And my brother and I are constantly in contact just through text messages,
Right.
and my friends through text messages. And my father, I try to call him semi-frequently, once or twice a month.
Yeah.
And then your parents, like, well, you moved away for college.
Yes. And so it was always just, they knew I wasn't going to ever come back to Connecticut
Right.
in the long term.
Right.
So I think they've gotten used to that. But to add about just some of the struggles or things that we have to think about as expats, I think sometimes we just have to remind ourselves that actually we're the guests in the country.
That's a very
right?
good point. Very good
And
point.
and I think having run an international school abroad, again, just listening to such a diverse group of families and parents and everybody having their own concerns, especially during COVID. It's a fascinating perspective that I think we have as expats, but to be able to enjoy the adventure of living in a different place outside the United States. I'm born and bred American, but also to respect and realize that we've actively chosen to not live in the United States and that we are the guests and the foreigners in the country. So it's trying to find that balance,
And
right,
it's our
appreciating it.
responsibility to fit into this culture,
Right.
not expect that this culture will change for our expectations.
Right. And it's funny that you bring this up because, I've mentioned before on this channel that, my career was in law enforcement. And one of the things I've always hated was if I heard a law enforcement officer says, if you're going to live in this country, you should know the language. It's not that simple.
It's not.
Thai is a difficult language, just like English is a difficult language to learn if you wasn't born in the United States. But Thai is very difficult. And one thing I can say about the Thai people, they're very patient. Google Translate, gestures we do. But the bottom line, I am humbled to be here, And I'm reminded every time I wake up that say, man, I get to utilize geo arbitrage and live in a place where I could do things I could never do back in the United States.
Yep.
And so, I tell people, this is their country. I'm very patient, very thankful, very blessed to be here. So
I spend a lot of time trying to, when something happens that is outside of my expectations, we'll have a conversation and I'm like, now I wonder how that particular thing evolved. Why do they do this like this? So one example that is very curious to me, there are many scooters and motorbikes here, and I know you ride your scooter.
Yeah.
And in the US, a scooter is essentially seen as a car in terms of following the rules of the road and the amount of space that it takes up on the road.
Yeah.
Here, the scooters ride right on the line, on the lane divider, which for me, I'm a little uncomfortable passing on either side in the lane because you're so close. But I think they do that with the expectation that cars can pass them.
Right.
And that's one of these things that I've been very curious about. How did this evolve? And I'm not trying to make them, follow U.S. traffic laws or something, but I want to be respectful of why they do what they do and what is the expectation of how I'm supposed to behave, how I'm supposed to, in this case, drive.
Yeah.
With this.
I think it's just, as a defensive driver, and now I don't say it with a negative connotation, but just being defensive because, like you said, motorbikes right there next to you on the line. Not only that, they will come between two cars, and so if you're getting ready to switch lanes, you better make sure you're looking to see what's happening. Because I always look, when I drive the car now, that mirror, that mirror and that mirror, so I'm constantly paying attention. That person 50 feet up ahead on the motorbike, is he going to shoot out in front of me right now? So,
and you always assume that he is.
Yes, you have to drive for other people, so it makes it very, very interesting.
With regards to what specifically about Thailand, about our visa process coming here, I can talk a little bit about that because I'm 50 and I'm old enough to get the retirement visa, but she is not. She is here as my dependent. So there are two types of retirement visas that somebody in my age group and my fiscal bracket can apply for. The first is the non-resident type O, and the second one is the non-resident type OA. And the type O is a little bit easier. It has less requirements in terms of documentation. However, when we started this process, the agent who was helping us with applying for a visa said that in his experience, he was seeing an increasing number of non-resident O type visas having visa requests for their spouses denied. And we said, okay, so what about the non-resident type OA? And he said, well, I haven't seen anybody have their spouse dependent denied for that, but it's much more difficult. There's more paperwork involved. So just apply for the O first, and if that doesn't work, apply for the OA. So we asked a little bit more questions, and it turned out that all of the requirements for the OA, all the paperwork requirements, we already had from living in Taiwan.
Oh, okay.
So we didn't have to go get marriage certificates apostilled or certified. All we had to do was go get our fingerprints run. But the tricky part about the OA is you cannot apply while you are in Thailand.
Right.
So we happened to have to go to the United States for a conference in January, and we were, 5 blocks from the Thai embassy. So at that time, we did our fingerprints, we did our background checks, and we sent everything to the Thai embassy in New York for processing. And it came back that I was denied for insurance reasons. Now, for the OA visa, you have to have a certain level of health insurance. And we still have Cigna Global, which is a Cadillac plan. It's a wonderful plan. But you have to have this one specific Thai form filled out. And Cigna just could not do it. I sent them the form 3, 4, 5 times. After the 5th time, when they could not properly fill out the form, we contacted our agent, and he said, well, just buy a very inexpensive Thai health insurance policy.
That meets the criteria.
Meets the criteria.
Okay.
So I said, okay, well, how much is that? And it was $80 US a year.
Wow.
I said, for $80 US a year, I can do this. But I do have to tell you, I'm not a small guy. And so I did this application, and because my BMI is so high, right, because I'm obese, they were going to deny me. So my agent had to convince them, no, he actually has this other insurance policy. He's only buying this from you to fulfill the requirement for the visa application. So they said, okay, we'll give you this policy, but you have no benefits. Okay.
You're paying for the signature.
I'm paying, so I paid $80 for the signature, sent that back to the Thai embassy, boom, here you go, you're approved, your wife is approved as well,
Oh, wow.
and off we went.
Awesome. And I will tell you this, folks, I haven't talked to 2 people that their visa journey has been the same. You're going to have your own journey. It's not going to be easy. An agent does help, and my plan is to really interview an agent and hopefully break it down, but it could be very challenging. If I was to talk about my most challenging thing here is meeting those deadlines, as far as when you got to do, we had to make one trip, one border bounce, as they call it. We had to do a border bounce, and so there's a lot of things, but if I were you and I was coming over here, I would look into an agent, because if not, you're going to end up looking like me after you pull all your hair out. So, if you have someone that speaks the language and can help you out with that, that's great also.
For us, the agent we did the entire application. The entire application is online, and if you're in the U.S., you have to find the Thai consulate closest to you. You can't just apply at any old consulate or the embassy. And in the case of New York, well, actually now for all of the visa applicants from the U.S., it's done online. And it is a fairly simple, straightforward online application. Where the agent helped us was understanding what to click in a drop-down.
Okay.
When you apply for the visa type, there's 15 different visas, but we only qualified for 2, and he was the one who told us which ones. And he would explain to us if we had a question on a particular requirement, but he did that for us at no charge, because we basically did all of the work doing the application.
So just advice that he was giving you with
He was advice. And then he was also the agent for the insurance company, so he made some money off of that. And now that we've gotten here and we've needed things like re-entry permits and certificates of residency, help converting driver's licenses, those types of things he's helping us with, and making money. We're paying him for that. But the original application process we did ourselves with his advice for free.
Oh, pretty cool. Now, with that said, what are some things you thought would be a struggle and you got over here and said, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be?
That's the list that's so much longer than the list of everything that went wrong.
You know what? I tell you, for me, I was concerned. I was concerned about the language, and there is, to a degree, a language barrier. But man, you'd be so surprised how pointing and smiling would get you so much accomplished. And I've gone in restaurants, I've ordered stuff, and I've gotten the wrong thing, but it tasted well, and so it's okay, so I get it right next time. But really, I think that's what scares people to death, is thinking about, you grew up in a place for 50 plus years like I did, and all of a sudden one of the things that I struggle with is not being able to read signs as I drive down the road. You have all these storefronts, you actually have to get up close and personal to see what they're selling inside, but it's almost, it is being ignorant, because you can't read or write when you get over here.
That's
their
correct.
language. But overall, I've been very comfortable with my move so far.
No, I think, thank goodness for Google Translate, right? And the camera function that translates signs.
And menus.
Yeah, exactly. And we're learning Thai, from an app. I recommend the Ling app, right? But language is just one tiny piece of just getting used to a new culture. And I think going with the flow is part of the attitude that really benefits expats.
Sabai,
right?
sabai.
Right. Or Maipanrai
Maipanrai
is also Thai for you're welcome, or that's all good, or it's okay.
Yeah.
Right?
So when something goes wrong,
with
my penrai, it's all right, just kind of go with it.
Yeah.
And sabai is, take it easy.
Yeah,
Yes,
take
yeah.
it easy.
Be relaxed.
Yeah.
But I think, right, and there's a joke that there's a term called Thai time, right? So you just have to expect things are not going to be on time, and that's okay. And
We put our garbage out, and they come get it whenever they want.
maybe it's collected on Mondays, maybe not.
Maybe Tuesdays, maybe Thursdays. Maybe they show up this week, maybe they don't.
Yeah.
Right, so it's getting used to that. Like,
Right.
I don't want to say lack of structure, but you just have to be okay with maybe other people not being on a schedule. I think budgeting has surprised us. It's been more affordable to live in Chiang Mai than we expected.
Okay, see, that's what I wanted to get into. That was my next question. So it was a nice transition for me. What was your response when you first saw how much you'll be paying for your house, and then when you got your first utility? And I can imagine being in Connecticut. I know you were in Taiwan for 6 years, right? 6 years? But I can imagine what kind of electric bills you had, in the winter months. And
Well, we can talk about Taiwan. And we were in a very large house, which was needed to entertain people for work.
right.
And our rent here in Chiang Mai is 1/10,
Wow.
10% of what our rent was in Taiwan. So just take that last zero
Yeah.
right off and throw it away.
Wow.
And in Taiwan, our electric bill, which is primarily air conditioning, was more than our rent. So we got here, and we had set a budget for ourselves, a maximum budget of
2,000.
for the entire month, not just for housing.
Right.
Just over, I think, right? Just over 2,000.
Yeah.
And
So 2,000
US.
American US? Okay.
U.S. And we got here and found that the house was much less than that.
Yeah.
And we also realize now that we are paying for our location. So we found a house a little bit further outside of the city that is the same price and is probably 3 times the area of the house we're in now.
Oh, wow.
So where we struggled coming from Taiwan was we had furniture to fill this very large, very, very large house. And we sent some of it back to the US when we left Taiwan, and some of it we sent here, but we sent more than would fit in the little house that we're in. So as much as we love this little house and we love the area, it simply isn't big enough. And getting a self-storage facility cost as much as our rent the house for the month. So again, serendipity stepped in, and we were fortunate enough to find this house in a housing development where we didn't have to go through a realtor, didn't have to pay any additional fees, and it's 3 times the size of our current house at the same cost, the same rent.
Now, with that said, you know, you guys made a decision to have a lot of your stuff sent over here, right? But, you know, would it be safe to say that anyone who moves over here, there's furniture stores, there's everything that you...
What we've found as we have been looking is that every place we looked at was furnished. Whether it was a house, a condo, or an apartment, it was furnished. And we did not need to send one bit of our furniture here. And that, I think, was something we didn't expect. When we moved to Taiwan, everything was unfurnished.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we had brought, you had furniture that you had brought to Taiwan the first time, brought back to the United States, brought back to Taiwan again, and now we didn't need to send to Taiwan or to Thailand, but it's coming here anyway.
So what you're saying is even your furniture is world traveled.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and we don't honestly know how long we will be here. We do still have our applications pending in Portugal, although currently Portugal is a very expensive place to live, much more than here. We could not afford to be retired in Portugal. But we sent all of our sentimental things back to the U.S.
I see.
Photo albums, family heirlooms, that type of thing was all back to the U.S. and is in a climate-controlled storage facility not too far from her parents. So I would say that if you are seriously considering a move to Chiang Mai, it's a different electrical grid. So anything you have that's electronic that doesn't have a brick, like the brick that's in a laptop, or the transformer that's on the end of your, cell phone charger or anything like that, it's not going to work here. Certainly anything with an electric motor will not work here. So sell all of that, buy it when you come here. Furniture, you're probably going to come to a place that is furnished, so don't bring your furniture, sell it before you move. And if you do need furniture here, it is much more affordable and honestly higher quality. You can get very high quality teak furniture here for what IKEA costs in the US. And you won't have to pay to ship all of those things. You won't have to pay import duty on all of those things when they pass through customs here. and then you'll be supporting the local economy when you get here, and it'll make life much easier.
And I will say, along those same lines, that our place was furnished when we first got it, but you sit down with that soft cushiony stuff, and I'm a pretty big guy also. But I went to Home Pro, and I was able to get almost identical, the same big recliner I had back home. I can lay back in. We had the sofa that has the 2 recliners on each end, for comfort. So if you're coming over here used to a certain type of comfort, you will be able to find that over here as well. That's not going to be a problem.
I think the other thing that surprised me the most coming here from Taipei, which is a very big metropolitan center, to sleepy little Chiang Mai with population, that is 1/10 of what the population in Taipei is. The food offerings here are amazing.
Oh.
In Taipei, we could get food everywhere, but it was all somewhat altered to the local palate, which completely makes sense. Much of the Taiwanese and Chinese food I loved.
Yeah.
The Japanese food, fantastic. All of the Asian food was wonderful, but Western food was not what we would experience back in the United States. Here in Chiang Mai, the Western food seems to be similar both in terms of content and probably superior in terms of quality to what we were used to in the US. We were looking the other day, if you want to get snooty and look at the Michelin Guide. Although, to be honest, the Michelin Guide also does like food stalls and street vendors. And do you remember the numbers?
Yeah, to put it in perspective, there's something like 120 or more restaurants in Chiang Mai listed in the guide. There are 0 considered for the guide in Boston.
And all of the United States, there's
only something like 189 recognized Michelin
crazy.
restaurants.
And 120 just in Chiang Mai.
And they're affordable over here too.
Absolutely.
So affordable.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you want a Michelin meal, come here and buy it here.
Yes.
Because for $5 US here, you get the Michelin meal that would be $500 in the US.
Yeah. And the same kind of, display or presentation. A lot of the presentation is just as good as the meal itself when they present it to you. So,
and there are enough expats here that there are Italian markets that have imported Italian meats. There's a company here that makes all kinds of cold cuts, charcuteries, sausages, and there's a German restaurant that we found that has a German buffet that was better than the German restaurants, more authentic, I felt, than the German restaurants that we experienced in Boston, much more like what we might see in Bavaria.
That's crazy.
So it was just mind-blowing how good the food is here and how inexpensive it is.
And just randomly, I've counted, I want to say 3 Irish pubs so far too. So you won't miss St. Patty's Day. You can come over here and enjoy it as well. So, but as we head down the home stretch, you ready for this question here? It's kind of like the newlywed game type thing. No, I've heard this several times before. When you retire together, you not only have to love each other, you have to like each other, because you're going to be spending a lot of time together. Now, how do you take up your time as far as in retirement or semi-retirement? How do you fill that void? Because I know a lot of people go back to work, sometimes out of necessity for money, but sometimes to give themselves a sense of purpose. So what do you do with your time to keep moving?
I mean, I'm still sort of taking clients and having the opportunity to travel, and so I really enjoy the flexibility though. So I think that's why semi-retirement makes the most sense for me, because I'm not 50 yet, but I have to balance that with how long I'm away from Mike and from Chiang Mai, and again, like how long a flight is or how far I have to go, right? So I think we do talk about that balance. And I obviously still work according to an academic year, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm looking forward to the summer where we can spend more time together and travel for fun. That's why we do pickleball together,
Yeah.
right? Twice a week. It's something to do together. It's fun. It gets us out and active. And then Mike's found some clubs that he's
I
a
won't
part of.
lie. I do struggle a little bit when she's not here. When we're together, I think we complement each other very well. If one of us says, "Oh, let's go out and do something," the other one is right there to be supportive and say, "Yeah, great idea. Let's do it. Let's go out." But when she's out traveling, I say, "Oh, I could go out and do that, but it's hot outside.
I would have to get dressed.
I have to get dressed." Whereas when she's here, she's very supportive, like, "Yes,
Yeah.
let's go." But I have, as she mentioned, I have found there's a lot of clubs here for expats. If you have a particular interest, whether it's playing bridge or yoga or something, there are opportunities. So I, way back in high school, enjoyed taking photographs. And then kind of fell aside as life took over and I didn't have time and I didn't have the money. And now that I'm retired, I was able to go out and buy, it's not a new camera setup, it's 10 years old, but it's good for me.
I'll say it's new to you, right?
It's new to me. And now I have the time to go out and take photos. And back in high school, it was film and you had to pay to have it developed. And now I take a picture and it's like free
Yeah.
because it's digital. And I can go out for a couple hours and just mess around, take 200 photographs. And if none of them come out, that's cool.
Yeah.
And I joined the Chiang Mai Photography Club, which is a bunch of both amateur photographers and retired professional photographers.
Yeah.
And then there is a studio here in Chiang Mai that does events for photographers. They'll set up a model and a theme, and then you pay to come and take photos, which was something I had zero experience with. So that's been a lot of learning opportunities for me there. And we were fortunate that we had some friends already in Chiang Mai who we've been able to connect with and further expand our contacts through that. And then pickleball has been fantastic for meeting people. When we go play, there's people from all over the US, Luxembourg, Australia, New Zealand, France.
Yeah.
It's a great group.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100% there. And almost any club that you belong to in the United States is probably over here, because I found the Toastmasters that I'm going to join, a Toastmasters club. They have TEDx, so they have, if you want to go check out a TEDx speech or you want to be a speaker, that's something to look into. So if you were to look up, just do a Google search on that, you'll see there's so many different things you can do. If you're not busy, it's because you don't want to be busy. So there's stuff to do.
And there's plenty to explore.
Yeah. Oh my, the national park's just around us. It's too hot right now, but later on, I'm going to talk about that later on, how hot it is.
And it is a cafe and coffee culture here.
Oh.
So going to find little coffee shops, I read somebody posted a fact on one of the Chiang Mai Facebook groups on the number of restaurants in Chiang Mai, that if you went to 3 restaurants a day, it would take you 83 years to go to all the restaurants in Chiang Mai.
Wow.
So there is plenty of food to explore.
Absolutely. But with that said, what he said about the coffee culture, let me tell you something. If you're clean, you don't do coffee anymore, this is not the place for you. There's a dealer on every corner. I'm telling you. So get ready. But I want to end this with what I call Give Me 5. I have 5 questions, and I want answers from both of you.
You got it.
All right. So first question, American or Thai food?
American.
American?
Thai.
Thai. So if you're eating Thai food, spicy, or not spicy?
Not spicy.
Not spicy.
Not spicy.
Not spicy. Okay. All right. Now, if money or nothing else was a barrier, if you had to leave Thailand tomorrow and move to any country you would love to, what country, what other country would that be?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
For me, I love Taiwan. I miss Taiwan. I would go back to Taiwan.
I would say the UK.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. You want that? You like those winters, or you probably vacation over here, right?
You said money's no issue.
Yeah. Next year, right now we're still wrapping up the smoky season. You stay for the smoky season.
Mm-hmm.
Next year, stay or go. Would you go down south, or would you go travel to another country? What do you think you're doing next year to counter that?
I think go.
Yeah.
Well, we just actually had this conversation, and some of it depends on work. Because if, for example, if one or both of us have some opportunities to go speak or work abroad, I don't know that it makes sense to go down south if we're only going to be here for 2 weeks out of smoky
That's
season
true.
anyway.
So see, it kind of dictate itself as you get closer. Now, one of the things that I found out, this is my last question for you. You guys did take a peek down south at the beaches, right? As a possible, now that you've been up here in Chiang Mai, the south or the north of Thailand, as far as staying long term?
North.
North.
North, even though I don't get to scuba dive up here,
Mm-hmm.
it's wonderful. People are wonderful. The lack of tourists is wonderful. I think that when you look at Samui and Phuket and Krabi and Pattaya, there are so many tourists, and they are party towns, and I don't think I would enjoy living in that environment.
Yeah.
It's great to visit,
Yeah.
but I don't think I'd like to live there.
Yeah, I feel the same. I like the greenery up here that I didn't see as much, but there's just something about northern Thai food too that I could eat this for the rest of my life. That's just where I'm at with that. Okay. Now, before we go, you both have a social media presence. Let's start with Grace. Grace, where can they find you on social media?
So I'm on Instagram under the handle Know My Chiang Mai. So I basically document all the adventures we have here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll get your link and I'll put it down in the
Okay.
description as well.
Great.
What about you, Michael?
So I'm on Instagram as well as thedodges.travels, and I don't document any one thing particularly. These are all photographs that I've taken from our travels all over the world in the past couple of years that I
And that's probably going to increase with you in the photography club, right? And taking more pictures.
The wonderful thing about digital photography is you can go someplace and take hundreds, if not thousands of photos. So even if I never went anywhere, I still have 1 terabyte of photos, which is probably tens of thousands of photos.
Oh, wow. Wow.
But, maybe 1% of them are actually really good.
That's why we take a lot, right?
That's right. Shotgun, right? You just
That's it.
and hope that one comes out.
Well, if you made it this far, thank you so much. We appreciate. Let me know in the comments what is possibly stopping you from either being retired over here in Thailand, semi-retired, or maybe you've made the plunge and you are retired over here. Let's hear about some of the challenges you may have had and what is your experience so far. Once again, thank you for joining me on the channel. I love you, and I will see you in the next one.